It is very important to me that I leave something for my community, for future generations, to remember that the Holocaust did happen. And just to go back to that other point, these people are not just numbers. They're people like you and me. They're people who had dreams, they had goals, and their lives were cut short. Luckily for my grandparents, they were able to survive and they were able to grow their own family here in the United States. And I'm so very grateful to them, because I would not be here today if it weren't for them. In the Jewish community, we have a saying called Lador Vador. In Hebrew, this means from generation to generation. It is important for our community and for our faith to pass down the traditions of our people from one generation to the next. I feel with that saying in mind, I took on the torch, and with creating this project, I too am now passing down a very important part of our Jewish heritage and our Jewish history. It wasn't always so important to me to carry on the Jewish faith, traditions, or history. This only came about in the past recent years of my life. Growing up, I grew up in a Jewish household. We were Reform, so we weren't always observant of all the religious traditions, such as celebrating Shabbat every Friday night or going to temple, but we did celebrate all the major holidays. And that was very important to us, to still always incorporate Judaism and the lessons into our daily lives. And going to a Jewish elementary school, I learned about the Holocaust from a very young age. But at that age, I didn't quite understand what the Holocaust was, how it affected me, or I didn't even really know the concept of death, obviously. But as I got older and more mature, I would say when I got into high school and I was really able to comprehend what happened to my people and what happened to my grandparents' families, instead of trying to find inspiration from it or appreciate what I have, it kind of went in the opposite direction. I questioned a lot about my faith. I questioned God. I didn't believe at that point that God could be real if something so terrible could happen to my people. So I went on having these thoughts for a few years, and it wasn't until I was 20 that I went on this trip called Birthright. And Birthright is an organization that allows for young Jewish people to go on a trip to Israel for free. So with that in mind, I wasn't thinking, oh, I'm going to connect with my spirituality. This is going to be a whole revolutionary trip for me. I was just like, oh, free trip to Israel, why not? But I would be pleasantly surprised, because growing up, the few times I did go to temple every year, the major topic of discussion would be partially about Israel. And growing up here in the United States, Israel didn't seem like a real place. It seemed more fictional, more biblical than actually real. And then as I got older, I became more scared of going there because of all the war and conflict that happens in the Middle East. And especially after 9/11, I was afraid to even go on an airplane. But when I went on this trip on Birthright, something actually did change. One night we were in Jerusalem, and we had plans to go to the Kotel, which is a place near the Western Wall where Jews go to pray for Shabbat services. That night, I was pretty sick, and I didn't feel like I was up for the walk to go from where we were staying to the Kotel, because religious Jews do not drive on Shabbat. They don't use any form of transportation. So I decided I would stay back in my hotel room and try to recuperate so I'd be all right the next day. But while I was laying in bed, something happened that I can't quite explain. I all of a sudden began to cry, and I didn't know why. And I began thinking about the place that I was in. I was in Jerusalem. I was in the holiest city, or one of the holiest cities in the world, but definitely the most special for the Jewish people. And thinking about these things, thinking about where I was And where I come from, I started crying and I felt this kind of spiritual presence within me, around me. And I can't say for sure whether this was the presence of God or just me feeling finally reconnected with my Judaism, and maybe it was a little bit of both. So from that night on, I realized my faith is important to me, and it is important for me to spread the word of my people to my future generations, to the Jewish community, and to anyone who is really interested about the history of the Jewish people. When I began the process of creating my website and doing the research for the Never Forget project, I didn't really realize how emotionally invested I would get into it or how much work it really required. It took me several months to gather documents, to do video recording, photographs, and making sure everything was historically accurate. The best part of creating this project was really in the interview videos that you will see on this website. Interviewing my grandparents was, of course, very precious to me, but I also got to interview 2 Auschwitz Holocaust survivors. And when I sat down with them and listened to their stories, it didn't feel like this happened over 70 years ago. It felt like it could have happened yesterday. It was very hard to sit there and listen to what happened to my good friends Lucy and Joseph. It's indescribable, and I'm sure you will feel that when you watch these videos. So before I let you go and check out the rest of this website, I just want to give a special thanks to the survivors, my grandparents. I also want to thank my family, my parents, Robert and Cheryl, my brothers, Ross and Stuart, for their support, and my friends who have also supported me through this process. And I would also love to give a special thanks to my academic advisor, Michelle Johnson, because without her guidance, this website wouldn't be as beautiful as it is today. So thank you very much. And I hope that you will share and support this website and also many other causes related to Holocaust remembrance. Thank you.